Today we are going to discuss a topic advertising as a tool of communication. We already stated that I have already stated to you that what is advertising. Advertising is a one-way communication process. It is a form mass communication with the public. It is usually one-sided, that is from the company to the buyer, potential user of the product. We already know this, the advertising a one-way process. It is from one identified sponsor for the masses as a whole. It is a form of a communication that typically attempts to pursue the potential customer to purchase or consume more of a particular brand of a product and services. As per Bouvet, advertising is the non-personal communication of information, usually paid for and usually persuasive in nature about products, services, or ideas by identified sponsor through the various media. That means advertising itself is the process. Here we include one person that must be identified sponsor. He will choose a media, whether it will be a newspaper media, magazine, you can say internet, and he will communicate about his product to masses by the process of communication. So communication is very important tool of advertising. It whether it is a one way communication, but one must require to communicate about its product to the general public, to the mass consumer. Adverts are part of our daily lives, whether you realize it or not. We have already seen number of advertisements. It is part of our life, whether you like it or not, whether you realize it or not. But it is a general part of your whole day. Every day we meet them at every turn in different forms. Effective management of marketing communication firm has a significant impact on its operation in a highly competitive environment. Your advertisement must be attractive. It must be attractive so that your product can go for a high sales, and competitive strategy will be nothing in front of your product. So you have to be very effective in your communication so that communication will take place in a good manner and you will have more sales volume as comparative to your competitive companies. Advertising as a tool of a communication mix is a part of a corporate strategy as a long term. It is also addressed at the operational level directly across the product life cycle. You required communication process at every stage of your product, whether you are starting your product, whether you are actually growing of your product, whether you are diversify your company, you need to communicate your product. It is hardly conceivable that a firm whose objective is a profitable and also a long-term activity on the market should be achieved without the use of promoting their firm and products. One should has to communicate their process, their product, their firm, so that they can achieve a profitable position in the market. If we talk about brand scenarios here, there are different brands. All of them communicate to race in a competitive market to achieve their main aim, that is profitability. Marketing communication can be described as interactive dialogue between the organization and the customer in the stages, that is from prior to sale, before the sale, during the sale, of course, and use of product, and continue to end use product after selling of the product. It answers two basic questions. The first one is how the organization will find their customers. Obviously you have to go for a very in-depth analysis. For that you have to actually conduct a survey. You have to see what your consumer wants. You have to target a market. You have to segment your market here. That means you have to find your customers, and how you will found how customer will find the company. You have to find the way that also you have to communicate with them. This is our product, we have launched it for you people. This is specialization of our product, so that you can purchase it. You have to communicate about your features of the product to the customers as well. So in marketing communication, the two questions will be go side by side. The one is how the company will find the customers, and how the customer will find the organization. It is only happen when you actually follow the process of communication. The main objective of marketing communication include build a product preference with the potential customer. You have to actually build a list of your product preferences of your customers. You have to inform your customers about product or services and the benefits, the features, the differentiation feature you are offering them to against your competitors. You have to convince your potential buyers to purchase your good or services. You have to remind them again and again. You have to familiarize your customer about your products, about your philosophy and values of the firm. So you have to communicate with each and every stage of your product. When you are going to introduce your products, you have to tell them about the preference of their taste, about customers' choice, about their habits. You have to actually seek your potential customers. After seeking it, you have to go for informing a customer that your product has these features. The competitor company is not offering these features and we are offering it yet. You have to differentiate your product with the competitor products. You have to convince your potential buyers that so that they can purchase your product, and also you have to remind them to to purchase it again and again. You have to maintain your customer also, you have to retain your customer also, and it is only happen if you choose a process of communication via advertising. Process of marketing communication. The process of marketing communication takes place between the organization and its potential and existing customers, sellers and buyers, also between the organization and various stakeholders. The process of communication takes place between organization, already your existing customers, and the new one is going to enter, seller and buyer, company and the stakeholders. Stakeholders are the one who have material interest in your companies, whether these are students, whether these are government, whether it is any department, product department, purchase department, finance department, your human resource department. Stakeholders are those who have material or potential interest in your company. These groups include all entities that influence or vice versa are influenced by the company. These are suppliers, business partners, employees, investors, media, shareholders, citizen association, public authorities, and NGOs. These are stakeholders. Who are stakeholders? The suppliers of your company, the business associates of your company, employees, the investors, the media, shareholder, citizen association, public authorities, students, government, NGOs. All these have material interest in your companies. The objectives of advertising are closely linked with the strategy of a firm on which it is based. This may be in the area of awareness about the firm, its knowledge, popularity, belief, intent about its activities. Why do you need advertising? The main aim of advertising that you want to closely link with your firm, with your customers. You want to communicate about your firm, about knowledge, about popularity, its belief, intents about your product to the customers. Key target of advertising based on the primary goal of advertising message and role of advertising in the product life cycle can be defined as follows. The first one is informative aim. Advertising informs the public about a new product and key characteristics. You need advertising in your product life cycle as an informative message to communicate to your audience. The purpose of this ad is to raise demand and interest of your consumers. Persuasive advertising succeeds in potential of increased competitive pressure. It means you have to convince your product, convince your customer to purchase about your product only. You have to convince your existing or your potential customer to pursue them so that they can purchase your product only. Reminder advertising. This advertising has to keep our product and brand in the mind of the customer before upcoming season. This advertising is basically you once your customer have purchased your product, but again you want to show them, again you want they will purchase your products. So you have to give them the Reminder advertising. Advertising can influence human behavior only if it is passes the adoption process, that is which they perceive, and the processing if they understand your advertisement. This means that one can create an internal mental message, internal image of the mental contained in advertising. That means one has to create an internal mental image of the message so that this message can be communicated to the receiver itself. Positive advertising affects a person only when the picture is connected with the current message with past experience. Past perception has motivating quality. That means if there is a positive advertisement, they have to connect it with some experience, with good past perceptions, with the motivation quality. As a whole, this become an incentive to purchase a product, service, etc. This means it is basically become an incentive, a benefit, so that a consumer can purchase a product, a service. Advertising passes on this path through two processes of perception. One is sensory process that is prepared by our sense organs, and second is cognitive process of perception. That means processing the information, organizing the information to see what basic message it has, their inclusion in a particular category, enrichment of existing system of knowledge. That means one, you use it by sensing your organs, and second, you use it by your mental perceptions. All the promotion techniques are based on communication. It is a process in which two or more persons consciously or unconsciously attempt to influence each other through the use of symbols or spoken words. I am agree with you here that advertising is a one-way process of communication, but communication itself is a two-way process. Basically, when you choose advertising a media, that means you are communicating about your products, but when customer purchase it, it is also giving you feedback that he has purchased your product. So communication is a two-way process. Communication is described as a process of transmitting information and generating common understanding from one person to another. The common elements in the communication process are the sender and the receiver. It has main four basic components. The first one is sender, media, message, and receiver. The sender is referred to the person who has need to convey the desire or idea or concept to the individual, where the receiver is the person to whom the message is sent. First, the sender gets an idea what to communicate. The source then can encode the message and sends the message via media. This message is sent through a channel, whether it is a newspaper, it can be internet, it can be radio, it can be TV. It is then received by a receiver who decodes a message and send a feedback to the receiver of having the received the message. Through the feedback, the sender knows that the message has been received. It is important that message to be received and convey the meaning it is intended for. You have to ensure that the message has to be understood by the receiver as it is communicated by the sender itself. The sender encodes the idea by selection of words, symbols, or gestures which are used to compose a message. The message is the outcome of encoding, which takes the form of verbal and non-verbal or written language. The message is sent through the medium or channel which is regarded as a carrier of a communication. The medium can be face-to-face conversation, telephonic calls, emails, messages, letters, notices, and so forth. The receiver decodes the received message into the meaningful information. There are 9 elements of communication process. Let's discuss in briefly now. Sender and receiver are the major parts in the communication. Sender is a person who sends a message. Sender is a person who actually visualize an ad, who actually maintain an ad through graphically, who basically use the symbols to convey the message and produce a required response. For instance, a training manager conducting training for a new batch of employees, sender may be an individual or a group or an organization. The views, background, approach, skill, contingencies, and knowledge of the sender have a great impact on the message. Receiver is a person for whom the message is intended or aimed. The degree to the which the decoder understands the message is depend upon the various factors. The message which is sent by the sender must be received by the receiver in the same sense. That is when your communication process will be achieved. The degree to which the decoder understands the message is dependent upon the various factors such as knowledge of recipient, their responsiveness to message, and the reliance of encoder or the decoder. Message and the media are the major communication tools. We have discussed the sender and the receiver. Now we will discuss this message. Message is a key idea that a sender wants to communicate. It is a sign that elicites a response of recipient. Communication process begin with deciding about the message to be conveyed. It must be ensured the main objective of message is clear. You have to actually clarify your message to your receiver. Message is the key element. It is the main source that you want to convey to your recipient, and you will convey it via channel only. Channel are the way you convey your message. These channels include verbal such as telephonic conversation, face-to-face conversation, as well as non-verbal such as email, text messaging. Each individual channel has its own strengths and weaknesses in terms of communication. For instance, written medium is chosen when a message has to be conveyed to a small group of people, while an oral medium is chosen when a spontaneous feedback is required from the recipient as misunderstanding are clear then and there. If you have very small group of respondent, you will choose a written way. You can choose email, newspapers. If you want to convey to your large public, you will choose the oral media of the communication. Now I have already told you message should be encoded, decoded. That means this process also require encoding and decoding of the message. This includes encoding, decoding, response, and feedback. Represent the major communication function. Encoding is the process where information you would like to communicate gets transferred into form to be sent and decoded by the receiver. It is actually your, if you can use any symbol, you can use anything to convey your message, but your message should be encoded first by a sender. Decoding is basically receiving end of communication. It is the receiver who decode your message. The way you encode it. This stage is just as important as encoding. Communication can go downhill at this stage if the receiver is not practicing active listening skills, or, or if they do not process enough information to accurately decode the message. Then you have response, the listening stage wherein the listener provides verbal and non-verbal reaction to what he or she hears. The last is feedback. I have already stated you that communication is a two-way process. So feedback is one of the main component of communication process, as it permits the sender to analyze the efficacy of message. It helps the sender in confirming the correct interpretation of the message by the recorder. It actually conveys to sender that your message is understood by the receiver as the way it is communicated. Feedback may be verbal through words or non-verbal in form of smile, signs. It may be written, it may be memos, it may be report, etc. Noise. The last element is the noise. Noise is any type of disruption that interferes with the transmission or the interpretation of information from the sender to the receiver. When your message is not decoded by the receiver the way you send it, that ensures that there must be interference by noise. Refers to the influence or effective communication that influence the interpretation of conversation. While often looked our communication device can have a profound impact both on our perception of interaction with others and our analysis of our own communicate proficiency. Noise is what? Noise is regarded as one of the major drawback within the course of making the communication process meaningful and in conveying the necessary information, ideas, and viewpoints. There are various examples of noise, just as different perception of messages, language barriers, emotions, attitude. This is basically noise. Might be there is language barrier. I can only understand Hindi only, but the message is in English. That means there is a presence of noise. So it is an element of communication process. The first one is sender. Sender encoded the message through media. It communicated message. Then there is a process of decoding. Then the receiver receives it. It gives response to the feedback, and there can be a presence of noise element also. There are two flows that basically affect your communication process. The first one is external flow. The second one is internal flow. The external flow is that where you want to see what your target market consists of. The target market basically consists of customers which are past, present, your potential customers that also known as your prospects. The channel you use, there is wholesaler, retailers, agents, and any other middleman, the government agency, private agency, the society, the companies. All these are your target market. This target market is basically consists of your customers, channel members, government agencies, and companies. The next is internal flow. When you use a flow of communication inside the company, that is various department, for example, finance, production, HRD, human resource development, all marketing function departments that includes research, innovation, development, packaging, branding, and production, which has to be very good as indicated by the consumer for this for a satisfaction. Basically, to communicate to make the communicate to make the communication process very effective, you have to use these two inflows. The marketing approach should be integrated. You have to use internal flow as well as external flow. With internal flow, what will happen? Your departments will be integrated. You will know about your synchronization, and with the help of internal flow, you can achieve the process of external flow also. You will satisfy your consumers. You will see your wholesaler, retailers, agents are also satisfied. You have to communicate with them. You have to use government agencies to communicate with them. Then you use companies that is competing, non-competing. You have to understand their strategies also to communicate with them. Types of communication. Communication can be of many types. It can be a personal communication where two or more person can involve. Other types of communication are formal, informal. Right now, we are indicating a formal communication, but whenever we have an interactive session, we can have informal type of communication also. It can be from upward is meant top level to lower level management. It can be downward, that is from lower level to upward level management. Verbal via speaking only, non-verbal via written message. Your body language can communicate it very well. Mass impersonal communication, when you actually refer to mass communication to general public, or organizational communication within a company, you have a communication. Interpersonal communication, the communication department, two different individuals, two different departments, integrated market communication, when you involve your all the marketing departments like research, innovation, branding, packaging. In marketing communication, mass communication is used for advertising, publicity, sales promotion, etc. Mass media can be through newspapers, magazines, hoardings, radios, television, cinema, internet, emails, transmit media, etc. Formal communication takes place in a company that can be horizontal or a vertical. It is also flow in the form of circular notices, orders. It can pass downwards down to various levels. That is from top level to middle level to lower level. This can be upward also. Feedback also goes from the lower level to higher level of the company. For example, the nursing superintendent of a hospital will communicate with staff nurse through assistant nursing superintendent, supervisor, and ward in charge nurses. So this is one type of communication. If a nursing superintendent want to communicate with the staff nurse, so he or she will communicate to superintendent, supervisor, and ward in charge nurses only. Informal communication takes place when there is no line of authority. Examples are like gossips, chit chat, kitty parties. All these are informal type of communication, like between your friends, family, and peer groups. Non-verbal communication is written communication that can be in form of a letter, circular, notices, by written media, magazines, emails. You can also use your body language, your senses for this type of communication. The posture, the gesture, the facial expression, silence. This can actually convey your message. But sending and receiving on the message can be happen with body movement, with posture, with gesture also. Non-verbal communication is a more accurate way of communication because it conveys a true and intended meaning of the message. Verbal communication can be words either by face-to-face or by telephonic. It is a spoken communication method, a combination of words we use to convey a specific meaning of the message. Some important elements of verbal communication are language, vocabulary, connotative meaning, pacing, intonation, clarity, consciousness, preciseness, comprehension, brevity, timing, and relevance. I have already stated that body language is a part of the communication. When you use a smile, your boredom, you yawn, you have angry face, by rubbing your hands, by standing posture, by sitting posture, you can communicate with your body language also. Advertising is the most effective with the product that can be differentiated from the similar products based on the consumer accepted quality difference. The focus should of advertising is basically on company image, name, brands, advertising services instead of a product. Television, radio, cinema, magazine, journal, newspaper, email, video game, internet. You can use any media to deliver your message. The company choose a method according to cost, budget, target audience, and their response. However, use of mouth advertising, personal recommendation is an unpaid form of advertising which can provide a good exposure at a minimum cost.